She sits comfortably in beauty and splendor. Her uniqueness spreads across ethnic and religious lines. Nature speaks to our existence with captivating rock formations and distinct geographical elements. But the narrative for several years in this part of the country opposes its warm embrace. Welcome to Plateau State, a home where the persevering faith of a leader trumps the nearly 2 decades of conflict despite its attributes. Its tenacity, unwavering integrity, and outright doggedness palpitate towards restoration of a state, relegating its status as the home of peace and terrorism. A bridge builder, a peace strategist, and a lover of sport combine as testimonies to its antecedents. Its political prowess and sterling leadership qualities earned him the record of the longest-serving speaker in the history of Plateau State Legislature, and as a 2-time chairman of Nigerian Conference of Speakers. A consummate legal practitioner and an administrator, Simon Bako Lalong cut the picture of one who dares to succeed against all odds. (2015), a defining year for Simon Bako Lalong. The responsibility of steering the affairs of a state like Plateau was seemingly like 2 sides of a coin. Wearing the robe came with expectations, but he came prepared. I heard about that nickname, Governor Alat, and it's quite interesting. Can you tell us about that? How did it come about?
Well, Governor Alat came in when we were paying salaries, arrears of salaries. At that time, salary was something in Plateau. To imagine that somebody will stay for almost 12 months. Local governments were 12 months, and the entire salary of civil servants was about 7-8 months, and then pension of about 12 months, local government, the same. So people were hungry. They were not working again when we came into office. About 4 or 5 months of strike, teachers were not paid at all for 1 year. And so salary was very precious to these people. So at the time, they were wondering whether they will ever be paid the salaries or even arrears of salaries. So within the promises I made to them during the campaigns, we got bailout, yes. The bailout was not sufficient, was not anything to go to write home about, yes. So what I did was to go to bank to get facility, to borrow money. And I told them, if I borrow money and I pay, the civil servants will come back. And when they come back to work, the IGR of the state will also improve. And so immediately what I did was, I made sure that when I was paying the arrears, we were paying about 4 or 5 months at once. So what we did was, the bank was not giving us the money at the same time. So what they did was that in one day, somebody would be going to the bank. You will see alert, because there were different banks. You will see one alert. As you are rushing to the bank, you see another alert. When you collect and you are coming back, you see another. Yeah. People were wondering whether it was true and rushing to banks and thinking that it was 419. And then they realized that it was real salaries. Some, especially the ones that sympathize with most, were pensioners. At the end of the day, one woman came to me. She said, "You didn't know what you did to my life. My husband died, and see what, we were not hoping to get anything again. Then all of a sudden, we had 5 months of salary arrears. So today, you are Governor Alert." So everywhere they move and they call me.
And it's now Governor Alert.
Governor Alert, Governor Alert.
I can imagine what that woman must have been feeling at that point in time,
Yes.
you understand? But away from that, let's just deviate a little bit. I want to know who is Simon Bako Lalong.
Yeah, Simon Bako Lalong is I will say, a man who was born in a humble background, in a village, very remote village. Before I came, there was even no primary school in my village. There was no primary school in my village. I had to move from my village to the local government headquarters to live with my uncle to attend primary school. But immediately I went to primary school in Shandam. Then the next year they established a primary school in my village. So my younger ones now attended schools in my village, but I went to Shandam to attend primary school. So I did my primary school in Shandam, and then secondary school too, part of my secondary school there. And went to School of Preliminary Studies, Kefi, from Kefi to University of Jos, after University of Jos to Zaria, and Zaria back to University of Jos again, then to law school. I became a lawyer. I must say that, well, in my village, I'm the first lawyer.
Wow.
First lawyer amongst even the second graduate in that village. So you can see how privileged I will be. For me, it's quite a privilege.
Leadership found Lalong at an early age, which piqued his inquisitiveness in the world of politics.
Our primary school was a missionary school. So many of us were taught by Reverend Fathers, Reverend Sisters, Reverend Sisters, and the way we were molded. I can remember that in my primary school, I was made a class monitor. And I was not the biggest we were the smallest in the class. And all of a sudden, a Reverend Sister, she's still alive, came to our class, and she said, "You are the class monitor." All the big ones were watching me. I said, how do I control these people? She said, "You are the class monitor." I was able to control them up to primary 7. I was class monitor. So I again went to secondary school. I was a class monitor in Form 1. And when I went to another school and left, I went to high school. I was in the student union government because this kind of leadership was already preparing me for leadership.
In 1999, under the People's Democratic Party, Lalong won with a landslide victory when he contested for Shandam constituency and the PLATEAU House of Assembly.
Immediately I left university after NYSC. I was elected the national president of the youth movement. And said by then they now said, "You must represent us in the House of Assembly." We had processed, all the meetings were all held under UNCP in my office. But all of a sudden when the election came, that time Abacha's period, it was decided in Abuja that I will not be, that I was not, I'm not very popular in Abuja. I had no people who knew me a lot in Abuja. So, and incidentally, it was a younger brother of my principal in the law firm that I was working that was nominated. We worked for him. He won, but when they were going to be sworn in, they were not sworn in. I think Abacha died, and so that regime was truncated. And so I went now contested under PDP, and I went to the House of Assembly. Again, when we came to the House of Assembly, I will say that out of those who were there, very few of us were graduates in the House of Assembly. I was the only lawyer. Now, when they went to selection, I attempted to be speaker, and I saw the politics at that time, and I withdrew. I gave it to somebody. The person did not last 1 year, and he was removed, so I was made the speaker.
Subsequently, he remained unstoppable, blazing the trail with feats that made a second endorsement on easy coach. His popularity grew across boards, endearing him to all his fellow speakers across the 36 states of the Federation.
Most of the legislations that were done there, private bills, I brought it to the House. Many of them who came didn't even know what is private bill. I brought through bills. Even the establishment of local government system here in PLATEAU State, I brought that bill under a private bill. I was also the one who initiated the law to establish the private university, the PLATEAU State University. I did it. Went up to here, to Lagos, to several places to understudy and to study that law, and came back and established the state university, and so many other motions and laws that were brought to the House of Assembly. Throughout that period, between that period, I was elected the chairman Conference of Speakers of Nigeria, the Conference of Speakers of Nigeria. So with that outreach, I met a lot of people. I met a lot of friends. That was where we met with people like Amechi, the Minister for Transportation, the Mamoras, current minister, this man Hennekin Lokobri, because that time there were what we call graded speakers. There were first grades of speakers, and I was lucky to be among the first graded grade A speakers at that time.
But it was not all rosy for Lalong, as higher powers truncated his political ambition for some years. However, his never say never spirit won the better side of him.
After the speakership, I was there for almost 7 years, until when we had our crisis in Plateau State. You know, the crisis between federal government and the state. And I was chased out. I would say chased out by President Obasanjo with armor tanks when we were in court. And they said they had vacated our seats. We said, how can you vacate our seats when we were already in court? But that time we left. When Dare was impeached by 6 members out of 14, because I held on to 14 from the House. So they couldn't get 14. So what they did was to use 6 members to impeach the governor. So when they impeached the governor, the Supreme Court said no, it was unlawful. They nullified the impeachment. That time my tenure had expired. So the next governor came, spent 8 years. I waited patiently. When he was moving, I now went in for governorship, and I was elected in Plateau State as governor of Plateau State.
Under APC then?
Under APC.
Traversing from PDP to APC, Lalong won the seat of the 4th citizen in Plateau State. His record of excellence continued with the consolidation of his predecessors' projects.
Immediately we came. There is this culture about governors who will come and the governors will say, we will not continue with projects. Yes. If you don't continue with those projects, what are you doing? It's wastage. It is better to continue with those projects. That to you will reduce costs, will also reduce costs, and also will help the people gain more. So they left a lot of projects. The governor who left then left a debt of about 220 billion. I didn't know where to start. So first, the financial challenge was there, and so what I did was, within the little resources, to complete some of the projects he left behind. Very huge projects. The very long street and the bridge, one of the biggest bridge, the overhead bridge, was there. I took it at 30%, and I finished that bridge. And then the road from the town to the airport to the junction, getting out of Jos. So many other projects was what I considered. The first 2 years, I was doing completing projects left by my predecessor, because some of those projects were very good to the people. And if you leave them there, it will be a problem. Some of those projects were also projects we left when we were in government. That is before, that was when Governor Dare was governor. In fact, some of them were even those that were inherited when the first civilian governor was there, Chief Solomon Lad. We went and continued with those projects. We finished some of those projects.
His core mandate transcends bias or sentiments, as it tenaciously embarked on more legacy projects across the state, with far-reaching effects in the area of education and health.
Legacy projects were tailored on specific and very important items. You know, in anything you do, if you don't put education, if you don't put health, then you would not have done anything. You would not have done anything. I realized that during our time when we attended public schools, we were not paying anything. Instead, government was paying us. Government would pay us to get to school. Government would give us uniforms. And then we had quality teachers. But all of a sudden, that culture was gone. And when people were on strike, only the privileged were sending their children to private schools. So I said, no, what is wrong in bringing that kind of culture back? And so we organized and we created 6 international secondary school of international standard. 6 secondary schools were building 6 secondary schools of international standard, 6 primary schools of international standard, and 6 health institutions of international standard. If you see one of the secondary schools, you won't believe that it is a secondary school, that it is a tertiary institution.
Are they affordable?
They are, but we have not finished.
Okay.
But most of them were at 90% completion.
Okay.
Unfortunately for me, when the Federal Polytechnic came, it was very handy. They were looking for a place, looking for land, where to start. We gave them one of the institutions. When they went and saw it, they said the Federal Polytechnic is already here. This is beyond a secondary school. So if you see any of them, it's beyond secondary school. The same thing with Pre-Rose Primary School, and then the health institution. The health institution, when we had the challenge of establishing a medical school in our state university, they said, where do we get the teaching hospital? We had one that we already built somewhere. I said, okay, you can take that one as your teaching hospital. So that one is also reserved for teaching hospital now. So that was what we did in addition to construction of all the roads that we're talking about. And up to now, we're still constructing. As I'm talking, by this week or next week, we're going to do groundbreaking for another overhead bridge. They are asking us whether we will complete. I say, well, just wait and see whether I will complete that one or not.
My dear citizens of Plateau State, the journey towards rebuilding our state has been a huge and challenging task. But through your support and prayers, we've been able to achieve a lot in our rescue agenda. By your endorsements and acceptance, we were re-elected into office to conclude the rescue mission by consolidating on the achievements of the first 4 years. As we continue the journey to the next level, I urge you to join hands with us as we deliver on our campaign promises as encapsulated in our 3-point policy thrust of peace, security, and good governance, fiscal infrastructural development, and sustainable economic rebirth. Let's work together for the plateau of our dream and leave lasting legacies for future generations. Let us think plateau and act plateau.
With triumph comes a test of faith. For Lalong, the long-standing feud among a section of his people could not be overlooked if meaningful development was to take place. The task was daunting, but for one who never backs out of any challenge, he took it in his strides, engineering a peace-building and reconciliation process.
We have 53 ethnic nationalities in Plateau State. You have Yorubas, you have Urhobos, you have all of them, Igbos and everywhere. All of them you see in Plateau State. So it's like a miniature Nigeria. So in order to get peace in Plateau, you must know how to harmonize the interests of all these 53 ethnic groups. Station here, they are already ingrained here. There's no way you can expect people who live for 100 years because of mining, because of the weather. The white man was also here. The British were here. So a lot of them were here in Plateau State. So it is your ability to harmonize the interests of all this that will create peace in Plateau State. So we did that. And so when we had the peace, in order to sustain and consolidate the peace, was when I now introduced the issue of the Forgiveness Day. A lot of people were helping me, so many NGOs, the Humanitarian Dialogue, they help us to establish the peace building. We have the only peace building in Nigeria, peace building agency. We established the peace building agency, and their own is to address conflict areas. So, but in addressing conflict areas, we also said, why don't we start with forgiveness? Forgiveness Day, as was done in South Africa. So the first Forgiveness Day we did it 3 years ago, and that one was specifically on the government. First, we came out to tell people, we said, look, all this write-up about governor, I don't want you to write, I am guilty. I've offended you. If not for this reason, for that reason, for that, because my sole responsibility is to protect everybody, to protect you and your properties. If by chance there were crises everywhere and people were being killed, properties destroyed, I take responsibility. And I accept the responsibility as your governor. Please forgive me. At the stadium. In fact, when we did that at the stadium, people were crying. A lot of people were crying. That was after we went to church, we emphasized this issue of forgiveness. I said, today, I am the one. I want you people to forgive me so that we can chart a new course. So a lot of them said, we are forgiving you, we are forgiving you. So in that case, we now move. I said, if you are forgiving me, then you must forgive yourselves. Where there are warring factions in a community, try to forgive yourselves. So there were forgiveness here. These ones will do it and come and tell me, we are forgiving ourselves. We are reconciled in our community with those who are fighting. So as a result of that, we now went and established the forgiveness and reconciliation gathering.
This seemingly simple-looking park, before now a traditional recreational center in Jos Plateau State, today symbolizes a rebirth. The city of Jos, its environs and parts of Plateau State have for the greater part of 2 decades witnessed violent conflicts, resulting in countless loss of lives and massive destruction of property over time.
There is a lot of bloodshed. Stop the killing. Stop the killing. And we must not get people handicapped or people killed before we come to our senses. And on the plateau in 2005, 2006, in Yalwan Shandam, when the governor was the speaker, we also worked with him to sign a peace affirmation in Yalwan Shandam in Plateau State. And since that signature, there had been no violence in Shandam and Yalwa in particular. So we are saying, what the governor has exported to the state capital, if people will only comply, Plateau will be the best place in Nigeria. And we look forward to its returning to its home of peace and tourism.
We have fought each other in one way or the other. And that's why in our traditions, I call on all the Muslim community and the people of Plateau as a whole to find a space to forgive one another so that the future is greater for our children. It is a symbolic forgiveness garden. The altar of forgiveness must be in our homes, in our community, in our organization, in our institutions. Everywhere we are, as long as one or two gathered, the top place should be an altar of forgiveness between a husband and a wife, between the father and his children.
This peace park is therefore symbolic and yet riveting, capturing the narrative of a people who realize past misdeeds and are embracing a new future.
Peace and Forgiveness Garden was established in 2019 by a policy statement that His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Plateau State, the Right Honorable Simon Bako Lalong made as a day to commemorate, the Forgiveness Day in Plateau State. So this part is symbolic in the sense that it creates a platform for conflict parties, individuals and communities to come here to talk to each other, and by so doing breaking down the walls of prejudice, and so that they're able to understand themselves and build a consensus around touchy issues of conflict and to live in peace, most importantly. So it's a very symbolic place. The role basically is to work with ordinary communities to do extraordinary fit for peace. And so this is one agency that is non-partisan. It's not about your ethnicity, your religion, your political parties. It's about our shared and common humanity and how we're able to talk to ourselves, understanding ourselves, and also challenging poisonous or toxic assumptions about the other. The idea is that it is much more profitable for us to talk to one another and to live in peace than to be fighting one another and killing ourselves.
What better way to depict forgiveness and peace than Nigeria's green and white colors, free of encumbrances weighing it down? For Plateau State and its people, expectations are high, and like a new leaf, they hope that this new chapter begins to bear fruit. In the second part of Inspirators with Simon Bako Lalong, We will show you the other side of one described as a lover of sports.